that you've been discussing today in terms of designing in India, making in India, and how you take that whole thing forward for your economy in this part of the world. So that is the intention. So let me, I should also say, I am going to give my perspective on this. It is also SAP's perspective. But what we've also got is outside, we've got several people who focus purely on the Indian market as well. So if you believe that what I'm talking about is too generic and too global, we also have some experts that operate in this space who have a much better understanding of the local market than I do. So some observations which have really been driving our understanding and our direction in terms of where we take our solution. First of all, this whole concept of the market driving innovation. It was talked about in the first session this morning, the first panel discussion, about being able to tailor your products and tailor your activities for the market. And I think we see that in every market that we play, in every market that we operate in. And one of the key themes that this is really driving is the concept of truly personalized products and truly personalized solutions. And there's a few that are shown on here that maybe I'll touch upon and talk about in a little while. But I think one of the things that made me mention this concept of more personalization in the product space is this desire, which is market-driven, it's consumer-driven, is having very, very significant impacts on the R&D world in terms of how you design and how you manage design data, which ultimately is introducing complexity into the manufacturing world, which is ultimately delivering complexity into the logistics and the supply chain world. So this whole issue around the consumer demand for a more personalized product, we see as being a really significant challenge for manufacturing organizations moving forward. One of the ways, and I'm not sure if you can read that, you certainly won't be able to at the back, but one of the ways that's really impacting the way people manufacture is this concept of vertical integration. And we all know for many years everybody was pushing manufacturing out and pushing it downstream and trying to take less and less responsibility for manufacturing. And now we see a total reversal of that, people manufacturing in-house. And the shift, in my opinion, will continue in the coming years as we move forward. The second thing I want to talk about is this area around customer centricity. So the consumer, the customer, whatever your industry might be, there's no doubt at all that they have more information about you and about your competitors than they ever had in the past. They know what works, they know what doesn't. They know where companies are making money, they know where companies are investing. And we feel that the only way to truly address this information age is to put the consumer or the customer right in the middle of your company strategy, of your manufacturing strategy, and indeed your design strategy. And we see this in more and more ways, that it's not just about information about the consumer wanting a choice, which ties back to that personalization topic. It's also the fact that they demand to be serviced with their personalized products in very, very different ways. And this means that we need to think again about how we manage logistics in business, how we manage supply chains. If a consumer expects that he's going to order something and have it the same day, you better be able to deliver that. And our point here is, if you think about the implications of that on your manufacturing, and if you think about that on the implications of that on how you work with suppliers, and ultimately if you think about what kind of change and pressure that puts on the design space, then you can see that this is a truly complex set of interrelated processes that need to be managed. The last of these things that I want to talk about by way of observation is this whole area around improving people's lives. And it's a difficult one, but if you look at some of the largest companies in the world, and there's even a medium-sized small German company mentioned on the bottom of this slide, more and more these companies in their annual reports are talking about the need to improve people's lives in terms of being more sustainable, greener. And sometimes I'm a little cynical, and I don't think companies just do that because it's the right thing to do. I think they do it because it's market-driven, and consumers believe it's the right thing to do. And we think that this also has a significant impact in terms of how we manufacture, and particularly how we manage logistics processes within many, many different industries. So I talked about these three key trends or observations that we make at SAP. So that's all very well, but how does that relate to business? And these three areas really are a summary of what we're trying to achieve at SAP. And this is trying to achieve in tandem with a significant number of our key customers around the world. So the first thing to mention is that if you think about the complexities that I talked about in terms of ever-increasing personalization of products and ever-increasing product variance, the complexities in terms of having the consumer in the center of everything you do, what we find is that in the past, many people thought of these as kind of linear processes. They thought of the idea of, let's design something, let's hand it or chuck it over the wall, as we used to say, into manufacturing, and at some point, let's worry about how we buy the bits we need and how we get this to the end consumer. Very kind of linear process. And experience today with complexity in supply chains, complexity with design taking place in multi-locations, multi-countries, is that we are not talking about linear processes anymore. We are talking about very, very complex processes, and the only way that we can really manage and address their needs is by developing the concept of networks. And that's what we want to share with you. We believe that there is the need for a product network, okay? And this is the idea of truly bringing together what we design, what we manufacture, and importantly, the assets that you use to manufacture it. And it's only by considering all the players in that space that you can truly have an optimized design, manufacture, and launch process. Equally, more on the traditional supply chain side, thinking about how do you understand true demand, and how we all know the inherent challenges there are with supply chain forecasting and demand forecasting. And again, we're looking at this from a network perspective and trying to bring together what we're calling three-dimensional planning, which is really to consider supply chain needs, to consider financial needs, and also to consider operational and inventory needs. And the last thing I want to mention on this particular topic is this whole business about how do you improve people's lives. And we think that there's a fundamental shift in technology which really enables this, and it is tied to the Internet of Things. So I heard virtually in every discussion that's taken place today, and in several of the videos that have been played around here, the topic of the Internet of Things. And I have to say, I don't know if there are any analysts in the room, but 2 years ago, 80% of my conversations about the Internet of Things were with analysts. It was the first thing they wanted to know. We understand your strategy, SAP. Now, can you tell us about the Internet of Things? Today, 80% of my Internet of Things conversations are with customers. That's the shift. So the Internet of Things is here, it's now, and I think from a manufacturing perspective, from an asset utilization perspective that you use to run your manufacturing facilities, this is the real opportunity that people really need to be building into their strategies. So we talk about these areas, and there's a couple of slides which we will share with you that really kind of just summarize some of the points that I've made there around, and I've talked through them, so I won't talk too much on these particular slides again. But this is really where we are coming from. There's one point on here that I do want to mention, and that's this idea of organizations thinking about solutions rather than products. And this is absolutely key, and it does tie into the Internet of Things as well. But we have seen many organizations thinking from a solutions perspective, which is perhaps, in some cases, a combination of products becomes a solution. But increasingly what we're seeing is organizations that are actually looking at not a combination of products, but they're looking at products plus something else to totally change the business model, and in some cases actually change the business that they're in. So product networks, I've mentioned already. Demand networks is more about how do you truly understand demand, how do you set up a network of communications that enables people to truly respond to that demand. And it ties all the way back into the things I mentioned at the beginning, because organizations, I've put there fulfill to please. It really is organizations demand. And if you cannot fulfill, you may not be the supplier of choice going forward. And whether that's to an end consumer or whether you're a tier one supplying an OEM, I think the same argument is absolutely valid. The Internet of Things, I want to mention briefly. It's kind of the buzzword. It is the technology that people are talking about. I got this 50 million from an analyst report not that long ago. I saw a report about a week ago that said 70 billion rather. So, you know, the numbers are a little bit up in the air. The important thing is there are a huge number of smart devices. There are a huge number of sensors and smart sensors in manufacturing facilities. And increasingly, we see this has been a real opportunity to really build out new and profitable business models. I would say that SAP is investing heavily in this area. We have created this platform, which we believe is the platform to move forward with an Internet of Things scenario. It's built on SAP technology. It's built on the platform that many SAP organizations are already running with SAP HANA. And it has a facility to build a whole series of new and interesting applications on top of. We've already built some, and our expectation is that our partners and our customers will continue to build out even more now that we've put the platform and we've put the connectivity in place. And I just want to say a couple of things about some of these words that popped up on the screen just a moment ago, because for me, the Internet of Things, this is the game changer. So phase one is people are connecting. They have smart devices. They're connecting it somewhere. They're capturing huge amounts of data. That's the connect. That creates many, many technological challenges, but I think with the advances that are being made and the advances that SAP are leading, the technology issue is no longer the issue. Many companies will then look at, we now have the connection. We have the data. How do we transform our business? And you know, some of the most basic are around some pretty straightforward connected logistics type stories. Some of them may be around connected maintenance and asset support scenarios. And these are really kind of the transformation. And we have companies today that are doing exactly what I just described. They've connected to the Internet of Things. They're doing analytics on the Internet of Things data, and they're using this to drive their business. Where we really see the game changer is what I've put on there and called reimagine. And this is where companies are actually totally reimagining the game that they are playing in. And there are some obvious scenarios which are tied into service, which I'll mention briefly. We have one company that we're working with, and they make big things. I won't share with you what that big thing is, but they make big things. Someone says, we need 5 of these big things, and they say they're going to cost you $1 million each. So they give them 5 million, and they get 5 of these big things. There's a huge business in keeping those 5 big things running. And through an Internet of Things scenario, this business is actually moving from a manufacturer of big things to a company that provides solutions around servicing these big things, which is a more profitable business for them today. So that's the reimagine. What does this change in technology do for you? How do you design with it? How do you manufacture with it? But how do you look beyond the walls of the manufacturing facility to tie in customer loyalty and bring this back to a more profitable way of doing business? So what do we do at SAP? I mentioned that we have created the technology to build these networks. These are business networks that allow all of the key players to connect and share one set of data. We think that's fundamental to the way forward. We're thinking of this in terms of demand. So how do we capture demand? How do we respond to demand? and also the product side, which is how do we design it, how do we manufacture it, but importantly, how do we manage the plant, the operations that support our manufacturing process. Without that, we don't believe organizations will be able to respond to the ever-increasing demands of the customer in terms of personalization and also in terms of delivery. We have the Internet of Things here as well, which I think is another dimension. It is a technology. Forgive me for that. I work for a technology company. But I think if you take the technology and think about how it can help you re-engineer, rethink your business, I think the opportunity going forward in the manufacturing sector is absolutely massive. And that's what we want to do. And if any of this relates to some of the things that you think might be relevant for your business today or in the future, then as I said, we have some experts outside who can help tie this back to what it means to really the local Indian economy and businesses. I'll leave you with just a couple of examples of companies that we've worked with who have really embraced what I've just been talking about, and then if we have a couple of moments, if there are any questions, I'll try and address them. Harley Davidson is a company I'm sure you've heard of. These guys totally changed the game. They totally changed their facility. If you look at the numbers here in terms of how long it takes them to get a bike off the line. These guys used to offer a number of bikes which were customized in the dealers. Okay? What they do now is they say to the customer, what do you want? Every bike, if you talk to Harley Davidson, every bike that comes off their production facility is a unique bike. They have something like 1,300 customizing options, and every one that comes off is unique. That's their story, and it comes off quickly. So think about what that would really mean in your factory if you suddenly said, we're going to do that too. Whether it be in two-wheel business, whether it be cars, whether it be any business. Think of the implications for design, manufacturing, and supply chain. And these guys have done it, and these guys are making a lot more profit today than they were before they went through this transition. Colgate, another very significant global player, and some staggering numbers there in terms of truly embracing the three-dimensional approach to planning, trying to understand inventory as well as understanding demand that's coming from the consumer base, as well as understanding financials as well. And then the last one I'll leave you with is John Deere. Again, a very significant global player in the large machinery space, in the IMC space. And these guys, we've done a huge amount of work with them recently. And this statement here is really tied into the fact that they have reimagined their business model. They've found a whole new revenue stream, and it's a revenue stream that's exceedingly profitable for them. With that, thank you very much for your attention. I hope you found the session useful. And if there are any questions, I can try and take them now or perhaps afterwards. Do we have a...
Would request you to please introduce yourself and then put up the question.
I'm Pankaj Agrawal from Lupin Pharma. A very, very interesting presentation. And would you like to go a little more in detail about some of the case studies which you talked about? And the case study which I'm more keen on is Harley Davidson, where you're talking about reducing that cycle time from 21 days to 6 hours.
Yeah, I mean, the Harley Davidson case study is something that is actually quite phenomenal. And in fact, we had, I think it was the CIO of Harley who actually stood up at SAP's global event, which we call Sapphire, and actually talked about this experience. And this was not just a, let's connect some machines via some smart centers to the Internet of Things. This was a re-engineering of their whole business. Be in no doubt. They had several manufacturing plants, they shut them down. They reduced manpower massively. They said, this is what we do today, guys. We have issues with brand, we have issues with quality, and we have issues making money. And they really took a step back. They were looking for a strategic partner to move forward with, and they chose SAP as the strategic partner. And it's almost like being it's not greenfield, maybe it's brownfield, but it's almost that they had the luxury of saying, we are in trouble, so we're going to reimagine our business. And they did that in terms of the plant, they did that in terms of their business processes. They changed the whole game. And we actually have some information out on the SAP area, and there's a couple of guys in particular who specialize in our manufacturing offerings, which are very prominent at Harley, that we can share with you. I think the important thing is they're designing in SAP on a platform, they're manufacturing on SAP, and they're running their enterprise on SAP, which means that some of the challenges around product variants, some of the challenges that you get with the massive amount of data and trying to manage that across an enterprise, a lot of that's gone away because it's one set of data that they're managing throughout the extended supply chain.
So when you're saying they're manufacturing on SAP, now typically we've known that we can run enterprise on SAP. All transaction capturing is done on SAP. So when it say they manufacture on SAP, what do you mean by that? Can you give a little more detail about it?
I'm probably going to get kicked off the stage soon, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, SAP has manufacturing execution systems. We also have what we call manufacturing intelligence and integration solutions. And what we effectively do, we're not going right down to the bottom level. We're not going down to PLC level. We're not playing with historians. But what we are doing is we put an aggregation layer above that. So we bring that data together. And we combine manufacturing data with enterprise data. And we make that available to managers. So we're managing the process, but we're also managing the management information side of the business as well. So that's our solution in the manufacturing space. So it really is a consistent layer of data, and we're using the same information in design that we're using in bills of material in manufacturing, and we have the SAP system actually literally driving the whole production process. And we can share some details with you, but I'm conscious of time, and perhaps if we have another question,
we'll do that. Thank you.
We have some.
Good afternoon. My name is Anil Mathur. I'm running a manufacturing company for material and pneumatic testing machines for defense and railway applications. My question is that you mentioned about the SAP is in a design also, design platform. So the design platform means you are giving a design tool, or you will have the integrate the design from our the departments from our tools and with your SAP. With your programs, SAP programs.
Yeah, so in terms of what we're doing in the design space, first of all, because we operate effectively across every industry that there is, and every industry has a different set of requirements in terms of what they use for design and what they're using in the engineering space. So our experience is many of our customers use an awful lot of different design tools. They'll use mechanical CAD system, electrical CAD system, increasingly lots and lots of software and lots of simulation. So we don't play in that space. But what we want to do is we want to get data from those systems into SAP as early as possible, and we want to manage the engineering bill of material. And what we provide is a link between the engineering bill of material and the manufacturing bill of material. And that for us is the most important thing, because when you look at many different industries and you look at where does change originate from, sometimes it's market driven, sometimes it's manufacturing driven, sometimes it's quality driven. And what we see is that many companies are struggling to manage that interaction between R&D engineering and their manufacturing and other downstream enterprise processes. So our approach is very, very simple. We don't do the engineering. We're not a CAD vendor, for example, but as soon as that data is available, we manage it. We manage the status of it, we manage the release of it, and we guarantee that people are always using the same data, and we allow that data to be reused all the way through the enterprise. That's where we see the benefits.
Your software directly reads the CAD SolidWorks data, or we'll have to feed it on the manual form? The design, for example, the design data which we are having in 2D and 3D. And so our design, which you will reconvert it to the bill of material and bill of quantity, so that your software will pick up those design and will give me the list of the BOQ or BOM, or will I have to give the BOQ and BOM on a alphabet, on a numerical form, on a written form?
It sounds like we've this is an area that I would like to perhaps take offline. We can talk outside. It's an area that I look after for SAP, so we could have a proper detailed conversation on it. The microphone is not great, and I'm not hearing the question very clearly. So perhaps we take that one offline, and I'll be around outside to cover that. Are we done? In that case, if there's no more questions, thank you very much for your time, and if you do have any further questions, we are outside. Thank you.
Very much, Graham, and please allow me to appreciate your presence with a memento. May I once again request Rajesh to please join us on stage and present him with a memento, a memory that will keep reminding you of Manufacturing Summit 2015. Thank you, both of you all. And now I'd like to present our final panel discussion of the day, Improving Operational Excellence in Manufacturing. Let us now welcome on stage our panelists for this panel discussion. Let's put our hands together as I welcome Mr. Mark True, CEO, IAMPL, Rolls-Royce and HAL joint venture. We welcome you, sir, and thank you for joining us. I'd also like to welcome on stage Dr. L.B. Singhal, Additional Director General, Foreign Trade. A warm welcome to you. Let's also put our hands together as I invite Mr. Tim Inhyun, CEO, Provoke. I'd now like to present to you Mr. Sanjeev Navangul, MD, Janssen India, pharmaceutical companies of Johnson & Johnson. Thank you for joining us, sir. And our panel chair, Mr. Manish Mathur, partner, Atikani. Gentlemen, please bear with us till we mic you up.
Of dimensions. So in that context, I have a few overarching questions which we can sort of touch upon from the vantage point of your own respective sectors. And my first question is, as part of this whole Make in India push by the government, where do you think India can play a role in global manufacturing? We've seen countries like China, like Germany, like Japan, sort of making their own unique positioning in global manufacturing, and with India now coming on the world stage in the manufacturing sector, what position can India take in manufacturing? So, Tim, maybe you want to start?
Sure, thank you. First of all, I'm sorry, my voice is a bit croaky today. Last week I was telling you, I had the opportunity to attend the Economic Times Global Business Summit where the Prime Minister was speaking. And I read his speech 3 times afterwards in the newspapers. And it seemed to me that the fundamental plank of what this government is trying to do is to create jobs. And you create jobs largely through new industries, through manufacturing and so forth. To answer your question, what could we do? Let me give you 2 points of view. First of all, from my own industry, which is textiles and garment making and retailing. I've been in India for on and off for 38 years in this business, in and out, and I've seen a lot of changes. And whereas when I started out in life, let's say America was the big volume supplier of fabric, garments, and so forth, and let's say Italy was the bespoke fashion end of the business. As the world has evolved, China has become the volume player. No question about that. American textile garment making has practically disappeared and been replaced by China. Now, India, when India gained independence 66 years ago, textiles was its main manufacturing business. It was the driver of GDP other than agriculture. And yet, over a period of 66 years, still today, only 15% of the Indian textile industry is so-called organized. 85% of this country's textile industry is cottage industry. Often people in villages in rural areas making beautiful fabrics. So I believe that textiles and fabric making is actually one of the key planks of of India's culture going back for centuries. So I see, this may be a little strange to say this, but I see India as being the new Italy. We have gorgeous products, which we need to get out there, but we don't have the supply chain or the connection in the industry to take those gorgeous products and show them off to the world properly. There is some gap here between organized textiles